All right, let's just jump right into this. Welcome to today's Explainer, where we're going to break down the truly terrifying timeline of an isolated night shift worker. We are looking at a deeply unsettling firsthand narrative today, and we're going to dissect exactly how a seemingly ordinary, boring job descended into absolute horror. We'll trace the architecture of this nightmare step by step so we can really understand the mechanics of fear, total isolation, and a dark history that just refused to stay buried. We're starting right in the thick of the dread here. Our narrator described the feeling of this job as being, quote, like the world has ended and you are the only one alive. You see, she was driven by pretty severe financial hardship. She was desperate for work, so she took this night shift job despite having some serious gut reservations about it. And almost immediately, that crushing isolation began playing tricks on her mind. Even knowing there were sleeping guests just 30 feet away in their rooms provided absolutely zero comfort. It literally felt apocalyptic. Section 1, the highway hotel trap. Let's take a look at the geographic isolation. So driven by that financial need, she took what was pitched to her as easy money. The expectation? A simple, easy 8-hour computer job. Sit at the desk, maybe greet a late-night traveler, run some morning reports, set up the breakfast bar. Pretty standard stuff. But the reality? Man, it was a totally different story. It was a deeply depressing, dark, and incredibly lonely shift. It wasn't just boring. As the darkness outside thickened, she described this literal heavy feeling in her chest, a paranoia that just made her skin crawl, even when absolutely nothing was happening. Just look at her absolute vulnerability in this layout. You've got the main door, which is completely transparent glass. Basically, if she's sitting in that lit lobby, anyone out in the pitch black night can see her clearly, but she can't see them, right? Then, the breakfast area to her left is this tight, confined space. To her right is the pool, which she noted was strangely designed and lit by these incredibly weak, creepy 40-watt bulbs. But the craziest part is that bottom row. The hotel is located in the middle of a barren highway. She is literally a 45-minute drive away from the nearest gas station. She is completely geographically isolated. If something goes wrong, help is simply not coming fast. Moving on to Section 2, First Signs of Dread. This is where we see a really terrifying, slow burn. Let's actually trace how this all escalated on our timeline. It starts off kind of small on day 3. She accidentally nods off at the desk and is suddenly jolted awake by the front doorbell ringing. She rushes over to that transparent glass door, keys in hand, totally panicked that her manager caught her sleeping, but no one is there. She makes some coffee, tries to shake it off, and then it rings again, still just empty darkness outside. Then, about a weekend, we get the shadow in the pool. By month 1, things explode into a massive blackout encounter, and all of that leads right up to month 4, which brings us to her tragic final night. Let's zoom in on that week 1 incident for a second because this pool encounter is an absolutely crucial turning point. Her manager actually praised her for doing good work and, as a quote-unquote reward, gave her extra chores to help kill time, specifically cleaning the pool area. Remember those 4 dim 40-watt bulbs? Where their weak light ended, absolute pitch-black darkness began. So she's bending down to pick up some dried leaves, and suddenly she sees a reflection in the water right behind her. A pitch-black, violently shivering shadow. She spins around so fast she almost falls over, but there's nothing there. She looks back at the water, nothing. She was so terrified she just locked the doors and wouldn't even go turn off the outside lights. And of course, the day shift staff just thought she was making it up to scare them. All right, Section 3, the blackout encounter. Let's see what happens when she comes face to face with this thing. Normally, a hotel like this would be totally prepared for the severe storm that was forecasted on the news, but their backup generator had conveniently broken down just 2 days before. So when the storm finally hits, the power cuts out completely. The result? Total graveyard silence. The hum of the lobby fridge stops, the computers die, the only sound is the howling wind outside. After briefly dealing with this incredibly bizarre complaint call from a teenage guest about a broken geyser, the phone line goes totally dead. She is left entirely alone in the dark. Now she's armed with nothing but this old, flickering steel flashlight she got from her dad. And sitting there in the dark, she hears a horrifying sound. It's a woman, groaning in pain, echoing from all the walls. She desperately tries to rationalize it, right? Like, is it the wind? Maybe a dry pipe? Just a creaky door? But no. It is distinctly a woman crying out in agony. And the worst part? The sound isn't coming from outside. It's echoing from inside the lobby walls, slowly drawing closer and closer to the front door. Absolutely terrified, she swings her dad's weak flashlight toward the main door, and when the beam finally hits the source of the noise, she just lets out a scream. Standing literally 2 feet away from her is this terrifying entity. Its face looked like it had been brutally twisted and folded in on itself. Where its eyes should have been, there were just these black, empty holes. This overwhelming, rotting stench instantly filled the air, and the entire body was shivering violently, exactly like that shadow she had seen in the pool weeks earlier. The second the light hit it, the entity trembled, like it was trying to step forward, but she stayed completely frozen in pure terror until she finally snapped out of it, bolted behind the desk, and just waited for the sun to come up so she could flee. Which brings us to Section 4, a dying battery. Trapped in the dark. You can imagine, after that night, she desperately wanted to quit. Who wouldn't? But she needed exactly 6 months of work experience for this job to actually be useful for her future career. And she was at 4 months, 3 weeks, and 6 days. She was agonizingly close. So she forced herself to endure the night shift just a little bit longer. And on this specific night, history decided to repeat itself. Another massive storm was brewing outside. Suddenly, lightning strikes, and boom, the power cuts out completely once again. But this time, she realizes she made a fatal mistake. That heavy steel flashlight from her dad, the one that seemingly kept the entity at bay a few months ago, she left it out in her car. It is pitch black outside, pouring rain, and she is way too terrified to step out into that darkness to go get it. So she's trapped inside, relying entirely on the glow of her fully charged laptop screen just to keep the darkness pushed back. And right here is where the psychological terror absolutely peaks. The screen flashes low battery warning. Now, she had actually brought a spare battery, but she left it sitting on a sofa in the common area, which is now completely swallowed by the pitch blackness of the room. She just stares at her fading screen, repeating this desperate mantra over and over. As long as the laptop has power, I am safe. She knows that the very moment her screen dies, whatever is waiting out there in the dark is going to strike. Section 5. The horrific truth. Let's dive into the dark history of this place. To figure out why this specific horror was haunting the lobby, we actually have to go back exactly 5 years. 5 years before our narrator's terrifying ordeal, the true origin of this nightmare was permanently cemented into the hotel's history. Turns out, this hotel harbored a seriously dark secret. A horrific crime had taken place in one of the rooms. A woman was brutally murdered by a night shift staff member during a severe storm and a total blackout. When her body was discovered the following morning, it was found to be horrifically twisted and mutilated. It matched the exact gruesome description of the entity our narrator saw caught in her flashlight beam. And the staff member who committed the crime, they fled into the night and were literally never found. And tragically, her story ends on a really devastating note. Morning finally arrived on our narrator's final shift. The daytime staff walked in to start their day, but our narrator didn't get to go home. She was found dead on the floor behind the reception counter. The police investigated, but they found absolutely no evidence of foul play, no signs of forced entry, and 0 suspects, just a lifeless body left behind. So it leaves us with this massive, chilling, unanswered question. We know her laptop battery died. We know the light went out. But who or what actually killed her when the screen finally went black? Was it the vengeful spirit of that murdered woman just lashing out in the darkness? Or was it something else entirely, hiding out in the extreme isolation of that highway trap? It is a terrifying testament to the sheer vulnerability of being completely alone in the dark. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep those lights on.